And welcome to this episode of the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast, where I'm joined by Marcus Cauchi. Marcus is a fractional CRO and MD of Laughs Out Loud Limited.
No, Laughs Last Limited.
Laughs Loud Limited.
No,
You're doing this.
Laughs Last Limited. It's those listening skills we talked so much about, Fred. He who laughs last longest. So that's where it comes from.
Oh, I can't believe
It's
you're
all right.
correcting me already.
I screwed up on your book. I screwed up on your
podcast.
book. It's only fair that you screw up on my company name.
They're neither things that are important to us. How to win friends and influence people and all that. Should we just chat about something else other than selling?
I have a friend. I don't need another one.
Let's talk about something else. I don't think we've got any credibility in talking about sales at this rate, have we?
Absolutely.
No, I mean, look, Marcus, you have got huge credibility in talking about sales. Can you give us your 60-minute introduction, if you can, to fit in all
my 60-minute introduction? Are you sure? Be careful what you ask for, because
Freudian slip.
Okay. So I've been in sales since when was it? 1996. No, 1992. So that's what happens when you get old. I've worked in 500 different segments of the market as a trainer. I've helped people sell everything from aircraft carriers to naked platters, spiritualism, and female fantasy fulfillment coaching, every hue, shape, and color of technology, construction, professional services, you name it, across 24 vertical markets. I've helped my clients grow their sales by over £6.5 billion. And I've written a book called Making Channel Sales Work, which is how we originally got to know one another. And I spent 17 years with Sandler Training, which was fabulous. I had a lovely time. But now I'm a fractional chief revenue officer for technology scale-ups in the 10 to 50 million mark, looking to grow by 200% per annum compound year on year. And they want to grow without the wheels coming off. They want to keep customers for life, and they want highly engaged employees.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marcus. And the thing you have mentioned there that I'm just going to warn everyone about is you're all about no fluff. So that's why I was so keen on talking to you, because I know that as we go through these elements of PQ, there are going to be very deliberate and practical ways in which people can apply this stuff, and if they don't like what they're going to hear, well, okay, they're not going to like it, but you're going to tell us stuff that works. So
absolutely,
I'm looking forward to. So without further ado, then let's just get stuck straight in. And we've got these 6 elements. I tend to start talking with trust. It makes most sense for me to begin there, because stuff's built on that. What can a salesperson do? Sales leader, because I know you often talk about sales leaders as well. So either, what can we do to build more trust? How can we get better at that?
Okay, the first thing we need to do is put the customer at the heart of everything that we do. And I believe that every customer, every prospect deserves to feel safe whenever they're engaging with a salesperson. So buyer safety is central to my philosophy. And if you want to be trusted, buyer safety has to be paramount. Now, what does buyer safety mean? Buyer safety means that we have to have their best interests at heart. We have to put their outcome before our outcome. If we're going to be trusted, we need to be rigorously authentic. That means we always tell the truth. You're known by the promises you keep, not the ones you make. You're known by your actions, not your words. So we need to be vulnerable. That means we need to admit when we don't know the answer, when we are not the right provider, even vulnerable to the point where we are willing to recommend our closest and most vicious competitor because they would serve the customer better. We must always be ready to tell the truth. And the problem with being a liar in any way, shape, or form, and there is no room for lying ever to a customer, including withholding information and being economical with the truth, because whilst you can be forgiven, the lie can never be forgotten. And any salesperson who thinks it's okay to lie is not someone I would hire. You need to be able to enter into constructive conflict. That does not mean that you just pick a fight for the sake of it. It has to come from a position of positive intent. If you see your customer or your prospect is going to make a bad decision, then you must confront it. You must tell them the truth. And in order to do that, you have to have mutual respect and equal business stature. And that's something that you have to earn. And that comes through preparation, planning, research. Never turn up unprepared. You need to have rehearsed. And I fundamentally believe that you should have 3 minutes of preparation for every minute you're going to be speaking to your customer. Now, that means that you need to learn how to say no, and you need to segment your territory. You need to focus on those who you are most likely to be able to help and turn up with a service mentality. You are there to serve. Sales is a service profession. Now, service does not mean being servile or going into servitude. Remember, equal business stature, different roles, but all focused on delivering the outcome that the customer will be renting from you over time. And if you are not relevant to them, then they will buy their service from someone else. You need to communicate with absolute clarity. Ambiguity is the mother of all foobarrs. It's the mother of mismatched expectations and disappointment. So if there is any lack of clarity, it is your responsibility as a seller to make sure that before you finish your conversation, both sides are clear on what both sides mean precisely and that you are in lockstep. If I think that blue means navy blue and yours version of blue is sky blue, we will have a disconnect. And as a result of that, we will find that there will be some form of disappointment or conflict or mismatched expectation. You need to deliver value at every touch. You do not phone up and say, Fred, I'm just phoning to check up on how things are going. Bring value. Do not be one of those interruptions to their day that causes them to think that you're a clown. Build strong, sustainable agreements all the way throughout every conversation. Get down and dirty and do difficult work together. You should encourage your customer to step out of the goal mouth, so it's you and them kicking into an open goal against their problems, and be their partner. That ultimately is what we're trying to be, not the trusted advisor, their trusted partner. And that, all of that means that you will have trust and the buyer will feel safe.
Wow. What a list.
It's hard.
No, it's
without putting
extremely
too fine a
hard.
point on it, this is bloody difficult. Okay, and that's why only between 0.5% and 2% of salespeople are top performers. And you only have to look at the way most vendor organizations, sales teams, distribution, and partner channels are made up. What you'll typically find is the square root of the number of people in that organization deliver at least 50% of the revenue.
Mm. Yeah, no, you're right. It is pretty hard, and you and I, we get irked. Irked is probably too weak a word, but I'll go with it to start with. By the fact,
Thoroughly
sales is a dirty word. It's not skilled. Anyone can do it. You're born with this stuff. It is so annoying.
Okay,
because
let
what
me
you
put
talked
well,
through there, that's quite a shopping list. That is.
yeah. Well, let me put a nail in the coffin of this pile of crap. Okay, no one pops out their mother's womb able to sell. It is a learned and acquired skill, and it takes constant development. And it is incumbent and upon the salesperson to improve. No one else. Do not turn up with that entitled mindset that I'm not going to invest. It's the company's responsibility. It's your responsibility. If the company happens to have a forward-thinking mindset and your leaders invest in you, then that is great. But it is up to you. You're a personal services corporation selling your expertise for money. In sales, you're not really ever employed. And if you have commission, then you can write your own paycheck. You determine how much you earn, and it depends on your willingness to invest in your own development.
Wow. Yeah, and I guess vote with your feet. Oh, they're not training me, they're not doing whatever. Okay, well, if you're that bothered and you're that good at it, go and sell yourself somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. If your company does not invest in you, and the bit that they really need to invest in is real coaching, not institutionalized coaching that feels like a punishment, but coaching that helps you to evolve and improve and become the best version of yourself. You have a partnership with your manager. And if your manager does not do that, then go off and find a mentor or a coach and pay for it out of your own pocket until you can find a job with a better company.
Yeah. Partnering skills with the manager is a whole new episode, which I will get you
Absolutely.
back on. But just talk me through this institutionalized coaching that feels like a punishment. What do you mean by that?
It's where the coaching is kind of imposed, and it feels like coaching is done to you. And so it's your idiot boss telling you this is the way I do it. Coaching actually requires you to do the heavy lifting, and your manager. And honestly, it's not always the manager's fault. In fact, it's often not. They've never had proper coaching. They've never had any runway into learning how to be a manager or a coach, so they don't know how to do it. Coaching is about asking you questions so you solve your own problems. And maybe they fill in the 20% that you can't. But it's really about helping you achieve your goals in life. And one of the most important questions any manager can ask at the interview process is, what is it you want sales to give you in life? Because no one turns up because they if you're turning up just because you want a job, you're only ever going to earn your basic salary. For me, sales has been a magnificent, beautiful journey. It's not always been easy, and it's often been excruciatingly painful and humbling because the stuff I've screwed up and the lessons my clients have taught me. But it gives me the choice to live where I want to live, to do the things that I want to do, to have the experiences I want, and to do important, meaningful work. The work that I do, I genuinely believe is life-changing. And whether you're selling software, services, hardware, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. Because your job is to help your customers deliver value to their business. It's to help them make the right investment for now and the future. It's to help them achieve their outcomes. And in doing that, you free up resource, you help them replace old legacy technologies or automate systems and processes so people can do a higher value work, so the businesses can thrive, to release executives from mundane firefighting so that they can plan and strategize, so that projects can be put in place so they can employ more people. Now, if you see your job as that, it's very different to turning up and flogging stationery, very different to flogging CRM systems, because no one cares about the CRM system. They certainly don't care about paper clips.
Brilliant. And if you're delivering that stuff, you are a far more attractive person to speak to than someone who rocks up with donuts.
Yeah. And one other point.
And that's it.
One other point. Invest in developing your business acumen, your understanding of businesses. Most salespeople do not have any business acumen. They don't understand all the different moving parts in a business. They don't know how to read a balance sheet. They don't understand the roles and functions of the executive team as individuals, and understand the impact of being able to do stuff or not do stuff has on them as human beings. They don't understand their users. They don't understand the interdependence of the different moving parts within the business. And if you can help them solve problems across multiple departments, you are increasingly valuable. And this is where most sellers go wrong, because they turn up and they vomit product information. They show slides of their headquarters and they talk about who their investors are, like anyone gives a damn.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Map of the world. Map of the world, few dots on it, logos. Oh, haven't I done well?
Absolutely.
Not really. You bored me. No, so you're actually coming on to well, you've already covered pretty much all the elements of partnering skills, because they work together, and trust is that kind of thing that binds them together. So talking about developing business acumen, and understanding this interdependence. I mean, these are two elements that have been singled out by Steve Dent when he was doing this research into these elements of PQ. So thinking about this win-win focus, that's what you're saying. If you understand business, if you understand organizations, what they're trying to achieve, this is the thing that will help you to achieve that as one of the elements of partnering skills.
Well, win-win is often misunderstood. The rule is that you're aiming to reach a win-win or no deal outcome, and that both sides must be happy and satisfied eventually. Now, in order to do that, you need to become a master of developing mutually agreeable, mutually acceptable, mutually understood agreements where both sides achieve comfort, where both sides give commitment, and where both sides understand what actions and activities each needs to take in order to advance towards the customer's outcome. And eventually, both sides get their needs met. It is not this bunny hugging, tree loving hippie shite that people talk about. This is really about establishing a great outcome so that your customer gets the success that they need. The experience can actually be quite uncomfortable. But what's also really important and incumbent upon any vendor organization is the level of engagement and the level of employee satisfaction and employee experience, because they are the single biggest defining factor on whether or not the customer gets the outcome that they want. And so there are all sorts of monstrously complex issues that need to be addressed. But most businesses in the modern age over the last 50 years have been driven to worship at the altar of finance. And that is putting the shareholder and financial cart before the customer success and employee engagement horse. And this is a problem. And this is where so many organizations have got it drastically wrong. If your business is set up to give your investors an early exit or a big exit, then the focus is not on putting the customer at the heart. The customer is an inconvenience at the end of a very long chain. And that is absolutely arse about face.
Again, very, very interesting. So, I mean, the other thing I'll just call it back, you're going at such a pace as usual. But even in the very first shopping list you were talking about, part of the trust process is actually how we manage conflict, because there is going to be some at some stage, and that's part of that win-win. It's that discussion
healthy.
Because you get great out, you can get some focus on outcomes, but you're coming new ideas. I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Well, let's find a way that is acceptable to both of us. Whoa, that's something that didn't exist before. We've invented something. Happy days,
Absolutely. Let me give you the poster child for this. One of my first interviews, or I think my first interview on my Scale Ups and Hypergrowth podcast, was with a guy called Tom Shodorf, and he was the SVP of sales for Splunk. At the time he took over, they were 42 million. 5 years later, they were $1.3 billion. Now, they used to roll up their sleeves and get down and dirty in fistfights in their internal meetings. They would get down and dirty with the customer and get involved in constructive conflict routinely because it meant that the customer got a better outcome. Every great salesperson I know co-develops solutions with the customer, with their partners, and together they are working towards helping the customer achieve their success. And if you ever forget that the customer is at the heart and their safety is paramount, then it all goes to shit. You cannot have your selfish self-interest, your exit, your target, your quota, keeping your job anywhere in the equation. Help enough other people get their needs met and you will get your needs met in turn. Zig Ziglar. Okay. The problem is that most salespeople are not given anywhere near enough runway, support, focus. And this is a middle management issue because managers Typically, their route to management is their boss gets fired, you get tapped on the shoulder and told, Fred, you are one, and that's your runway. So you do what was done to you, which is basically you pound your chest, you beat the table, and you tell people to focus on doing more dials. Now, actually, the best salespeople I know are planners. What they do is they plan their territory, they work out whom among those prospects are the ones that they are most likely to be able to help, and then they turn up and help. Caroline Pino also works for Splunk, but I'm not just using them as a poster child. She was in her first month at Splunk in January 2020, felt sick, went to hospital, got diagnosed with cancer. She's a fighter, refused to lie down. Throughout her chemo, she was only able to work about 2 hours a day because of energy levels. She picked 4 customers out of her entire portfolio of 40 and said, I'm here to help. And then she helped them. She finished the year at 360% of quota, working only 2 hours a day. Now, what she did was she created a win-win basis for working with those 4 customers, and she knocked the ball out the park. She's breathtaking at managing the interdependence within her own organization. One of her top skills is creating discretionary effort within her own organization. And that requires her to understand them as human beings. I think B2B and B2C is a misnomer. It should be H to H, human to human. And you know, getting your pre-sales people and your subject matter experts and your management and your executive team and your finance and your operations and your marketing people to work towards a customer's outcome, that takes real skill. And actually, what it requires is reflection. It requires planning. It requires genuine emotional intelligence. So you need high EQ to be a great salesperson. You need to be a planner. You know, Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz had already planned out which general would surrender to him at which village. And he had all the contingencies mapped out. And it was his greatest victory. It's, you know, probably one of, if not the greatest battle in history. He was outnumbered 3-1, and he still beat the crap out of the Prussians and the Russians.
His what ifs. He did all his what ifs to then work out, well, there's the weaknesses. So actually, well, I'll not have to use that what if because I've what ifed it already, and I know what I'm going to do instead.
And if this happens, then I'm going to do A, B, or C. And depending on the weather, the terrain, where they are, all that kind of stuff. And you've got selling is a cerebral activity. It's not just dialing for dollars. It's not just turning up and vomiting up product information, because no one cares about that. That's the ugly kid. You know, showing photos of your ugly children to strangers has never gotten anybody excited.
Yeah, I'm going to go back over this and count how many times you said the word outcome.
Yeah.
And it's probably still not enough. I mean, that is such an important thing. We've talked about win-win then. We talked about that interdependence. You've just mentioned EQ. You know, and I often say PQ. It's sort of like the lesser-known cousin of IQ and EQ. And it's certainly, for me, it has more elements of EQ in it. So one of the elements of EQ that I think is just worth us speaking about now is this concept of self-disclosure and feedback. Again, as a salesperson, how can we use that? Why is that an important area for us to get better at what we do?
Okay, every week in your calendar, you need to have 45 minutes to an hour with you, a pen, one of those things that actually spews out ink, a pad, and one question and no interruptions. And at the top of the pad is the most difficult, thorny question that you are tackling at the moment. And make it mandatory, make it as if it's the most important meeting with your most important customer ever, every single week. And calendar block it. And short of being dead or hospitalized, nothing gets in the way of it. If your chairman or your chief executive comes in, tell him, I'm so sorry, I have another appointment I cannot break. Give me another time. And almost inevitably, they can. Okay, but make that time sacrosanct. And reflect every day. I've always struggled with this, so I've come up with another alternative, which instead of using a journal, but I would recommend using a journal, I write content. And then I get a double whammy because I end up producing content that people find valuable because it's real life. You know, the stuff I write about is the stuff I or my customers, my clients struggle with. And I want to reflect on that every single day. The journal, I use a framework that looks at my behaviors. I want to make sure that I have at least 5 effective conversations every single day. Whether they're inbound, through referral, through cold calling, through content, through email, through public speaking, webinars, I don't care how, but have 5 conversations a day with real life, breathing, sentient human beings who are in your target market and who are at the point where they are actively looking for what you have to offer. Okay. I want to ask myself 2 or 3 gnarly questions. And I like to ask these questions every day before I go to sleep. And I let my unconscious mind do most of the heavy lifting. So when I wake up in the morning, often I have answers to these questions. And I call these affirmations. Okay. And it's an affirmation is a question like, what can I do to X by Y? Okay. What can I do immediately to? How can I? Who can X immediately? Okay. And so I want to ask these questions so that I'm using the power of my unconscious mind to reflect and to help me tackle my most important issues. G is gratitudes. What am I grateful for? People who are grateful tend to be way more attractive as human beings than people who are not. And you need to celebrate the things that you're grateful for. I want to evaluate my behaviors. How did I do against yesterday's behavior? If I did what I said I would do, great. And what was the outcome? If I didn't, how am I going to make it up? Because I don't believe that you move the goalpost, you modify the behavior. So I have a real issue with companies that keep leveling down the target so that they can hit a target that's just shrunk 3 times in 3 quarters. I want to capture lessons. And this is the most important part of your journaling activity. Capture 3 lessons a day. I always turn my lessons into content. That's really powerful because if you write it down, you're far more likely to remember it. And then fears, failures, and fuck-ups. How do you capture what you fear, how you failed, and where you screwed up? And then I like to say those out loud because it has less of a hold when I actually say it out loud, having written it down. And that frees me up from that psychological prison.
Brilliant.
Very powerful.
Massively powerful. Something I've started doing more recently. I use an app. You know, I use a robot to ask me questions, but it's the same thing. Ask me the question. It makes me think. That's what you're saying. Is make yourself think. You owe it to yourself. And if you're any good at sales, you know how to get people thinking is by asking good questions.
And
so can I just go over those again? Make sure I got them. It's affirmations.
Just one thing. Buy a book by a guy called Keith Cunningham, and it is called The Road Less Stupid. And at the back of every chapter, there's a bunch of questions that will slap you around the head.
Brilliant.
Okay,
cool.
So it's behavior, affirmations, gratitudes, evaluate yesterday's behavior, lessons learned, fears, failures, and fuck-ups.
Wow. 45 minutes every day.
That I would do maybe 15 minutes a day. And the 45 minutes is your self-reflection with one of your nastiest, most difficult questions at the top. And what normally comes out is more questions. That's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. The thing I love about this process is I always have more questions. And you differentiate in the questions you ask, not the information that you give. And when you're thinking about you or your customers' problems, and you come up with more and more insightful, powerful questions, that is what makes you stand out. That's how you become trusted.
Oh, we've had many a conversation about this, haven't we? About the old trusted advisor thing. I'm a trusted advisor.
Bollocks. No, you're
Yeah,
not.
I will tell you if you are or not as the customer when I feel safe, when I can work with you, when I'm getting the outcomes, all the stuff you said so far.
I don't want to be a
I
trusted.
bestow that.
I don't want to be a trusted advisor. I want to be your trusted partner.
Yeah.
And partners help each other get better. We don't always agree. We fight, we get down and dirty and get stuck into the difficult work. And the problem is that most salespeople shy away from the difficult work.
I think that's fair. I think that's probably fair. And if people listen to this, their conscience are pricking, well, there you go. That's the reason for that.
Yeah.
So again, we could talk about any one of these for a length of time, but I'm just thinking about some of the other elements. So change, comfort with change. Some of your thoughts on change, if you'd be so kind.
Death, toilet paper, and change are inevitable.
Is that a modern lockdown version of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, death and taxes, toilet paper and change. Yeah, when Darwin was talking about survival of the fittest, what he was actually talking about was survival of those that could adapt to the current environment best. That's why shrews evolved into us. You know, these tiny little primeval shrews survived the nuclear winter that occurred after the meteor struck. The dinosaurs didn't because they couldn't adapt. Now, we need to be highly adaptable. In this day and age, if you have not adapted to the fact that you are, as a road warrior salesperson, you are almost irrelevant nowadays. Sales continues to be relevant, but you turning up and breathing someone else's air was never an important factor. I and the people that I've worked with have seen no diminishing in their ability to produce by doing it over Zoom. That's a mental block. Since 2010 or thereabouts, since the real arrival of the internet, what economists used to talk about as the perfect market is pretty much there. Every one of your customers now has access to every bit of information about you and your competition, unless you choose to withhold it. They have access to pricing data, they have access to features and functionality, and the way buyers buy has changed dramatically. And I credit this to a brilliant man called Bob Moesta, Moesta, and you absolutely need to read his book, Demand Side Sales. The way buyers really buy is they make space. When they have a problem, they make space for it. And they may make space for 5 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, but they're making space. And then they start to look passively. And this is the zone of consideration. This is where they're just mulling things over. Then they move into active looking. This is where they start to download white papers, attend webinars, pay more attention to your content, and all of this. It's at this point they start to compare and contrast. And this is where they come up with their short list of potential vendors, and they probably whack them onto a spreadsheet, and then they start to make decisions by removing elements that do not matter to them. So you remove unimportant and nice to haves, and what they're left with are the compromise solutions of the must haves. And then it's down to the human relationship that they have with you. It's down to making sure that they feel safe. Where you get stiffed by a purchaser, whether it's procurement or a CEO or a CFO, is where they do not feel safe that you're going to be around, or that you can deliver, or that they're going to incur cost if something goes wrong. So you need to give them that safety. Otherwise, you will get stiffed on fees. Okay, and then it's down to first use. If the first use meets or exceeds expectation, they will continue to use it. Otherwise, they will suffer. They will already be suffering from anticipated regret and blame. If the first use does not meet expectation, then that regret and blame will become real, And then they will be looking for a way to get even or get out. And this is why we have to change the way we prospect. We cannot anymore prospect to hit our quota for this month or quarter. We need to prospect for customers who are going to be a customer in 5, 10, 15 years' time. We need to establish the right and a cadence of engagement with them where we can hold one another to account as partners, where we meet regularly, where we have them tell us how well we are doing, where we tell them how well they are doing, where we bounce ideas off one another, where we understand the direction, trajectory, and momentum that they are trying to achieve and what outcome they are after. So we can partner up with them and say, okay, we can help you here and here. And we can't help you here, but we know a partner who can, and we bring them in. And this is where collaboration in the future is going to determine your success. And all of this requires infinite flexibility and the ability to adapt to change, because your customer's market is changing. The technology is changing so fast. Every business, without exception, today is a technology business. They happen to be do recruitment. They happen to sell software. They happen to be a construction company. They happen to be a hotel business. But all of them are IT businesses. And if you don't have good systems that underpin all of that, and you don't have the right people, and your people are not evolving, and they're not engaged properly with the customer, then you're just going to become irrelevant. It's only a matter of time. It's an inevitability.
Wow. So again, you step us nicely into the future orientation element. Every business is a technology business. I can see people cringing at that, going, no, 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 I do X, Y, Z. And
Okay,
that's what you're saying.
it.
You are fast, because in fact, you're going to be more irrelevant faster if you hold on to that thing that you do, this thing that is your gig.
No one
That's what
buys
you're great
recruitment.
at, but use the technology to enable your gig.
Yeah. No one buys recruitment. No one buys a hotel room. No one buys a CRM system. No one buys an extension to their house. There are always further, deeper reasons. So you've heard the old cliche, no one buys the drill, they buy the hole. Well, no one buys the hole. No one says, I want a hole in my wall. And no one buys the wall plug or the picture hook or the picture frame or the picture. They buy the memory. Yeah, they buy that experience. And if you cannot get that deep into your customer's motivation for change, then frankly, you're just a commodity, and they will buy in spite of how you sell, not because of it.
Wicked. No, and that is certainly the way we're going. And just rewinding you slightly, which is ironic in the future orientation part, but what you're saying is that by prospecting differently, having this cadence and this conversation and this ability to see where the customer is going, what they might need, that's where we're going to be successful. Not, oh, look, I've got a bunch of these things, like the guy on the beach with the sunglasses when you're
absolutely
already wearing a pair.
You must always be timely, relevant, and deliver value. I'll give you an example. A client I've been working with operates in the asset management space. So when we were prospecting with cleaning companies, instead of turning up and saying, can we flog you some software? We started the conversation with, Fred, I want to talk to you about how cleaners are at the vanguard of protecting public health, and how you are at the forefront of getting the UK economy back to work, back into the high street and traveling again. Is this a conversation you're willing to have? Now, that's timely, relevant, and valuable, and something that strokes their ego, but it's also the truth, because no one sees cleaners as being that, but that's exactly what they are. Without cleaners, none of us are going to get back into to work. The vaccination's fine and dandy, but it doesn't give us full protection. So if you're a cleaner in a call center, okay, and they're hot desking, you better be cleaning those desks rigorously and fumigating to a point where nothing can live on those keyboards or those headsets or those desks or those chairs, door handles, lift buttons, all of this stuff. That's what cleaners are doing. They're protecting our health. And the problem is that most people, all they see is their product, and that's what they try and peddle. But if I can help a cleaning company be more successful, in turn, I will be more successful. If I can help a bank deliver rigorous levels of security, so that the 80% of their security people's time is no longer spent trying to tackle a problem. So one of my clients is a password-free solution. Now, if you eliminate passwords, there is no password for hackers to hack. Now, that frees up an inordinate amount of time. It can replace VPNs, password managers, it can replace multi-factor authentication and single sign-on technologies, all with one solution. That frees up time, money, resource, and mitigates risk and delivers security certainty. How potent is that by comparison to turning up and say, I've got a piece of software. Let me tell you about it.
When you put it like that, absolutely. Yeah. It's okay. So I'm aware of time. So I'm gonna ask you a slightly different question now. You've talked about good salespeople. They'll get down and dirty. They'll get stuck in. They'll do the hard yards. So I want us to imagine that in the future we can travel, and you and we're going to get on a plane, and we're going to go somewhere and do some good with our own fair hands. Mm-hmm. Which would be a shock to both our system, I suspect. But that's what we're going to do.
I do that every day. Just because you don't, Fred.
Oh, okay. That was a little bit of a self-reflection on someone else, wasn't it? But okay, so you're going to show me
a lovely shade of beetroot.
You're going to show me how to do all this wonderful stuff for people. But we're going to play. The reason I say that is we can either travel to Asia, Africa, or Latin America to do our good. Where should we travel to? Why are we going to pick that part of the world?
They're all exciting in different ways. I would probably pick Asia because I really want to go to China, Vietnam, Thailand, and the food is fabulous, more fabulous than the others. Again, the uptake of technology, I also love the fact that there's more of a collective mindset there. There is a genuine cultural advantage, I think, to going into Asia. But you have to do your research. And this is where partners will really play a very important part. You go to countries like India or Vietnam or Indonesia or China, and you don't understand the cultural nuances and how they like to do business, you're screwed. You're just going to be spending your time beating your head against the wall. So this is where I think partnership and collaboration really comes into its own. But you have to start with research. You need to have done your research. For God's sake, do not, I fundamentally believe it is an act of gross misconduct and sackable offense not to have done your research, not to have rehearsed, and not to have planned. If you turn up not having done any one of those three, it's P45 time, or for American audience, pink slip.
Right. Well, the reason I ask is what I like to do to say thank you for my guests coming on here who've given us some time is to do some business for good. I believe business for good. I know you think a very similar thing. And actually doing my research, I found an excellent way of making donations on our behalf. So B1G1, Business for Good, is a way that can do that. And I've got sort of three areas set up already where I'm going to give a donation related to education, because that's what we get involved in. And what I'm going to do is
can I be really cheeky? I be really cheeky? I have an education charity in Zimbabwe called Creating Better Futures. 97 pence in every pound goes directly to the children that they serve. They feed nearly 6,000 children a month, 2 meals a day, so that they're well fed and they can concentrate. They provide them with uniforms, books, and an education, and they also provide protection for children who are at risk. The lady who runs it is breathtakingly inspirational. Her name is Dorothy Dix, D-I-X, and if you're going to make a donation, please make it to that.
Oh, you're changing up my protocols, but I suppose
do what the hell you like.
No, that's what we do. That's what we do. You've got to charge. You've got to push. You've got to put me out of my comfort zone.
Every pound you give feeds a child for a month.
Okay, cool. In this case, then I will change. Usually, the Asian one, I'm buying a bike so that kids can get to school But in this case, because you're already lined up for this, I will certainly do that, Marcus. Not a problem.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
And lastly, then, how do people get in touch with you? Because you have given us so much good stuff there, and I'm hoping that people want to talk to you more about some of these things.
LinkedIn, direct message, and my email address is marcus@laughs-last.com. And the kind of people who I help as a fractional CRO are founders and owners of technology companies, ideally in the 10 to 50 million mark. And you want your business to grow, achieve real sustainable hypergrowth with highly engaged and highly productive marketing, sales, customer success, and account growth people. And you want clients to come back year after year. And if that's the sort of thing that you're looking for, then ping me an email or DM me and we can have a chat over Zoom.
Fantastic. Thank you once again for your time. Really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Fred. Always a joy.
Cheers.